3 years ago, because my background is cinema, we said, okay, let's look for our next horizon, and we spotted animation as a potential new thing, because Jerusalem has a B'Tzalel film school, considered not by us, by the American Animation Board, one of 10 best schools all over the world for animation. And there's a lot of talent in Israel, artistic and technology, but there is industry in Israel for a lot of reasons. People have tried before and failed, and it did more damage to the option of animation in Israel than helped. And we learned from mistakes, and we got advice from Israelis, who are also sitting here, and from a lot of advisors from all over the world. And exactly 2 years ago, we had a conference in Jerusalem, said we're going to build an animation industry in Israel, in Jerusalem, and people laughed. And today, 2 years later, we have Snowball studio in Jerusalem, Picture Boy studio in Jerusalem, 3 other small studios in Jerusalem. 5 Israeli feature films are being made right now in Jerusalem, and Snowball brought over big American productions like company maybe you heard of, Disney, and now Mattel, the sister of Barbie, which we call Siona, and we did that, and there's plenty of more things that are going to happen, but I'll be short. And the next big thing is VR. Because right now in the world, as you know, we're in a situation that it's almost ripe. The technology is there, not yet completed, and the main issue is storytelling, which lacks. And us Israelis, I think, are good in technology, are good in storytelling, too much storytelling. And I think that we can do it and become one of the world's leading countries in this particular area. So in the next 5 years, we have a plan to build gigantic VR studios in Jerusalem. And read my lips, in 5 years from now, we think that more than 2,000 people are going to work in that industry in Jerusalem. And that's the beginning. And from here, we'll move to Doron.
So, hi, I'll introduce myself. My name is Doron Kanan. I work for HMT, Edge Marketing Technologies. We do all kinds of stuff, augmented reality, virtual reality, even standard videos. So, my background is I studied film in Tel Aviv University in the early 2000s. And after that, I started working as an After Effects guy, as an editor. And in about 2011, I decided to make a little shift and went to study video game development at Shankar College, I guess it's called. So my main thing I wanted to do was point-and-click adventure games, if anyone knows what I'm talking about. It was very, very popular in the early 90s, late 80s. It started gaining a little more popularity since 2005 with the rise of the indie developer. And I wanted to be an indie developer and develop point-and-click adventure games. I developed one episode of a point-and-click adventure game, which I want in the future to continue. It's not really working right now. And in 2013, my wife, Yurem, started at HMT with a partner, Lee Rothschild, and they bought the Oculus Rift DK1. And the minute I saw it, I was blown away. And I decided to shift the episode I made of my point-and-click adventure game to VR because it was first person, it was, it really fit. It seemed to really fit. And it kind of worked. Not perfect, but it kind of works. And I put it on the Oculus Share, and people downloaded it, and I started talking with people. And in HMT, we started making VR experiences for marketing purposes for big corporates. So I started in Unity with VR it's pretty easy to do it in Unity if you know what I'm talking about. And ever since then, that's for the past 2 years, that's mainly what I'm doing. VR experiences, and some VR experiences I'm doing for myself, not for money. That's it. Any questions?
Good morning, Yoni from Snowball Studios. First of all, I'm in LA time. We're working, as has been told, these days with Mattel doing a new show for Barbie, something for little girls. So working with LA means that we're staying too late at night, and then mornings are really, really rough. Our attempts at VR were a few attempts. We had one show in which we did something for a new museum in Jerusalem, the Music Museum, which involved doing an interior of the Holy Temple with Christ walking around, and that was done in Unity with very low poly avatars and stuff like that, because performance was not really good at the time. Later on, we've decided to try and tackle 360 degrees video with stereoscopic setups of 12 GoPros. And eventually we found out the storytelling was actually confining us from using it in the way that we wanted, because that was for a certain client. And eventually we've just shot it in 2 cameras in stereoscopic, and then added all the 360 degrees content in animation. The only thing I can say is that, again, technology at the time was a bit lacking, and because of resolution, we had to drop the stereo stream and just go for a single stream of 360 degrees video. But the only thing I want to talk about today is what does it mean psychologically telling a story from a VR perspective, which changes the way a drama story is being told. So that's my perspective.
So my name is Gdalya. I'm from the Pixlers. I think I'm the token dinosaur up here today. I went to Syracuse University, but that was like late 60s, early 70s, so I don't really remember anything. But I did have a professor there named Marshall McLuhan, and also had an amazing television producer, writer at the time, Mr. Sterling, who created TV shows some of you might remember, Twilight Zone. And so it was really a focus at Syracuse about learning how to use content. However, the other side of my life has been very involved in technology. I've written artificial intelligence patents in the US. I was very involved in the rollout of new technologies and always looking to see how to integrate storytelling in new environments, because there's kind of a crossing the chasm sort of process that happens. And it's really about understanding where you are at what point and what you're capable of doing. At the same time, it's surfing, so it's also about trying to find the wave and know how to be on the next stage of development as it's moving forward. So the Pixlers now, which is primarily an animation company working in 2D, 3D, we're also an animation school. We're also hoping to follow the Snowball into Jerusalem. But we are now getting very involved in developing VR. We're not working specifically on a particular project in terms of actual rollout, but we are negotiating now with a major Finnish gaming company, because we believe that the true application of VR is going to really be in the space of gaming.
So hi, I'm Mia Erlich. I'm a doctor of animation and ludology, which is game fields. So basically the study of games. So I research animation in games, and some of you, of course, may know this. To some of you it may be strange, but these are actually academic fields of study, I swear. And, well, I guess what I'm most interested in, see, I did my, these are such emerging fields, and therefore they're connected to so many other related fields. I come from art history, so I'm really interested in visual culture. But in fact, my research kind of spans from art to film to media theory to philosophy, a lot of technology. I taught at Tel Aviv University. I taught a course about gaming, and I teach about new media art. I taught at Ben-Gurion University. And my research was about animated documentaries and documentary games. So So what I'm most interested in this idea of animation, both animation and gaming, which has been associated both with childhood in the sense of fantasy or almost artificiality, but how animation is used to engage with social political realities. So what that does to us as spectators, where we're presented with something that doesn't look real, although animation of course can look photorealistic, but I'm interested in animation that doesn't attempt to look real. And yet, animation that is giving us so much factual information about our world. So I guess in relation to VR, I'd like to kind of propose this idea that animation really is everywhere. And I mean, it's in simulations in news these days. It's so much of the informatics and the advertisements. I mean, so many of the great works that you guys have been working on that I saw. But even just when you think of your GPS system, I mean, so much of what we learn and experience in the world is provided through animation. So this changing concept of what animation is, and in the discussion of virtual reality and these blurred boundaries between the real world and these virtual worlds, I'm really interested in how animation makes those connections. So I think that's what I'll be focusing on. Here. I have one that works.
Okay, no, this is for you guys. That one is for me. Okay. Okay, so before we go into animation, this session is about, let's talk about the language, because that also deals with fiction, VR language. And up to now, we had 120 years, I think, of history of cinema building a language. In the first days, as we know, the Lumiere brothers screened in Paris, the train coming into the station, people bought tickets to see it, they were fascinated, but there wasn't a language still. And as you know, you all learned Griffith and all these guys throughout the ages, and now we do have a language, a cinematic language. And now, like people said here, VR is turning it all around, because our job is about manipulation. We not direct the actors, we direct the viewers, the crowd. And we, as directors, as filmmakers, we want to tell you what to look, how to see it, what's the point of view, and now it's a game changer. Because let's talk about 360. How do we manipulate the crowd? How do we keep the manipulation and the point of view, the cinematic language in this new environment?
Okay, so again, I'm going to talk about gaming, and gaming is a field which translates really easily to VR, and by easily I mean technically, because you can take any first-person game, take it to Unity, strap a VR camera, and publish it to the Oculus Rift, and you get a first-person game with you can look around, but it is so different to experience something in VR than it is on a one-screen computer, that I think we should take a step back and look how we do movement in VR. And it has to be different from the movement we do in regular gaming. I've got a video I want to show of all kinds of movement schemes that you can do in VR. So we'll probably watch it later. But yeah, I think movement is very important. And as for taking the focus of the player, you can do it with colors. You can do it with a narration, with another character who calls him, with sound. But yeah, it's a very, very new field, and we have to experience a lot. And I'm talking as a game designer. We have to really sit down and experience. Yeah.
Well, I think VR splits in between interactive content, which could be games or just interactive content, and video in VR or in 360. And what we saw is that when you're doing a video, it's much harder to get the attention of the viewer to focus on what you want unless you're doing really artificial things to how you capture it, which means if you put the camera instead of in the middle, you put it, you know, next to a wall so that you block some of the attention, and then you guide the attention towards a different area of the room. This is one of the things that you can do. You can use sound, or you can use the attention of other participants in the video to watch, you know, or to look at the person who is the main focus of attention. I think movement also, when you're looking at how to make drama content, is definitely an area that is uncomfortable at the moment, which whenever you see something, you know, if you imagine seeing an action scene in a real movie or like a normal movie, and then you transfer that into 360, people start throwing up. So you really need to start thinking about what gets the player or the viewer moving, which I think is just another factor in your storytelling. You know, all of a sudden is, where is the, you know, participant? He's no longer watching a screen, he's in the middle. So why is he there? How do we move him? How do we make it so it doesn't feel uncomfortable for him to get detached from the place he's sitting in? That's it.
Can I use this one? I think that I'm just going to pick up on what Yoni said, because it's a really important point. Excuse me. The bottom line of any entertainment is called the suspension of disbelief. In other words, you basically are willing to surrender the reality that you know and accept this as a new reality. And that's why when you watch a James Bond movie and you see something happen, you don't say, oh wow, what a great effect. You actually buy and believe it. And I think that maybe in part of this transition of how to deal with this, the basic focal switch from me watching there as opposed to me being inside there, I think in a way animation could actually bridge that more than live film. Because live film has too much of a reality association. You know what you see when you're surrounded. Once you're in a realm of animation, your mind has already accepted, I am now in a world I don't know. And therefore, as in a world of don't know, VR could actually see a greater transition to animation, because people might feel more comfortable there initially as this new perspective develops.
I think I'll continue some of the points that were raised here. I think first of all, when we think of animation used in these new technologies and virtuality in general, it's important to understand why animation has become so, well, such an essential part of the visual culture today. And when we think of animation, I mean, animation is all about movement, right? So it's this dynamic visual language, and once it's movement and dynamic, there's a sense of coming to life. Now, once we've got animation in VR that can react in real time to user input, that makes the entire difference, right? So that's one reason of why we're not using photography. And this idea that the more and more that we have virtual experiences, so it's experiences that aren't taking place in the physical world, we're getting used to this idea that our activities that are taking place in virtual worlds are actually being shown to us in animation. So this can be the movement of our mouse or our finger on the touchpad, or if we're talking about gaming, it's our avatar walking along in these virtual worlds. And I think what's really interesting, you were talking about the role of the viewer or user or player. Once again, I'm going to take this to nonfiction because that's my obsession these days and for the last couple of years. But I think what's really interesting in VR, and I was experiencing Noni de la Peña's work, Project Syria, last night. This idea that, once again, even if something doesn't look real, okay, in animation, but if the VR is successful enough to create that sense of presence for us, then is that presence enough of a sense of realism to make us believe? So, as you said, this leap of faith, that it's okay for us these days that something doesn't look anything like what we're used to seeing in the physical world around us, okay? But even though it's just symbolizing something, that presence is enough. So I'm really interested in the sense of realism versus anti-realism, if you want. So animation is something that supposedly isn't realistic, but realistic enough in the context of VR to make us, allow us to do that leap of faith.
We in Jerusalem, although we have, people think we're old-fashioned, actually I think we're the only ones now trying to seek the new horizons and to encourage new directors and filmmakers to go into that world. So, let's start with Yoni. Technology versus storytelling.
Well, I think in terms of animation, what we will see coming up in the next few years is more examples like Meet Henry, which means using animation in an uninteractive way, in a very high quality rendering, which Unreal Engine and the new engines allow. And as a result of that, it will create a new form of storytelling, which is sort of like a game engine or a game narrative that's playing without really stopping. So it means like it's waiting for the viewer to do something in order for the movie to continue, in order for the hero to keep on doing things. So I think that's where animation will see itself coming into the spotlights of VR, which means we will do a lot more, real-time animation. We'll use more game engines than rendering. As much as rendering in 360 degrees is just a press of a button these days. It's not, there's no technical barrier in making 360 degrees videos from animation, but it is lacking when you're comparing it to an interactive experience.
Can I steal a second to do
No.
the slides? Because it was...
Yes, of course.
Okay. Yeah, it's okay. So I don't know if you guys can see this, but I just kind of thought when we got to the issue of balance, again, as the dinosaur up here, so like I remember when everyone was losing their vinyl, although the TV show has totally brought it back, and they were like, wow, CDs are coming out, and I think somewhere down in my basement is like my 8-track. So it's always important to, whenever a new technology comes along, especially one that's probably going to be here to stay, it's also important to sort of keep a balance between the art and the technology. To sort of realize, is my message really the right medium for using this? And if it is, where is it at and how to go forward with it? So that's kind of, you probably recognize Alice and Dorothy. If you don't know who they are, you see from the cat and the dog. That's okay. So here's just some things for you to think about. There are no answers, they're just questions. We can go to the next one, it's okay. So you guys probably remember the cartoon you're probably familiar with here, Calvin and Hobbes. So again, we open our mind to new ideas, and of course at the end he says, I let my mind wander, and it didn't come back, and she said, of course, I always knew you had lost your mind. But the problem is, when you have new technologies, that's kind of like, I put this dude up here, you don't want to be everything to everyone. You really, if you are an artist, then focus on what you are saying. And then once you know what you want to say, then think about how to say it. VR may be the absolutely wrong place to go. It might be the perfect place, but don't make the technology the criteria. So I was just kind of playing with like the source of VR, so I guess this kind of was like the original VR, because if you really think about it, that thing he's holding there, that's not an iPad, it's called a newspaper. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But basically what the symbol here is, it's called the thinking hat, but the real idea is VR is virtual reality. It's anything that stimulates the mind to go other than where you are right now. So that was a sort of a look at the past. And then we have, this was my VR. People always talk about, especially if you were a deadhead, people always talk about like, you see all these colors now on LCD. Well, in my generation was LSD. So, and maybe even more colorful, but that was also virtual reality because it definitely took us out of our own reality. And then we had just a couple more, I think. Yeah, so this is like, okay, so now we have a new market. How are people, this is Yoni's vomit reference, how are people going to react to this? Are people there'll always be your people who are your early adopters, but we're talking about market adaptation. How will people feel comfortable? I remember the first time I put on a VR thing, all I could do was like sit like this, think someone's gonna give me a sucker kick to the groin, because they were so vulnerable, like, oh my gosh, where am I? But this is just something we need to think about how people react. And then I think I have one more after that. Yeah, the long-term impact. Are we really making people smarter, or are we just kind of like reducing them to, in fact, somebody told me the other day the definition of ADHD is adult deficit, hey, donut. So that's just something to think about in terms of where those of us who are responsible for creating content, where do we bring the world to as we explore? So that's what I meant to the balance of content versus technology. Yeah.
I hope you guys are writing it down. No, because it's very interesting. Okay. I'm writing it.
I think technique versus content. Once again, I'll take this to nonfiction, and the example that I was experiencing yesterday, the Project Syria, which please do try it. I think that when we're using new technologies in the sense of spectacle, something that's so exciting and this wow factor, something that's really dangerous is really that the technology or the presentation overshadows the content, right? And especially nonfiction, especially when we're talking about urgent social-political realities, this can be something really dangerous, where if we're experiencing something that the content is talking, I don't know, about Darfur or refugees, we'll walk away so excited over the experiences without really thinking about what it is that we've been told. So I think that's something that's very important to keep in mind. And then the way to use the technology, I mean, if we're talking about an era where we rarely believe images in general, and we're very skeptical, right, because we're so aware of manipulation, there's something very dangerous to be drawn into this, once again, very exciting experience. And I was thinking about Noni de la Peña's work. I don't know, how many of you have experienced Project Syria? Okay. I'm not ruining anything by saying that every once in a while there's almost this like cut scene, this camera cut scene, which you're drawn into this like white matrix, right, in between the scenes. And it's very disorienting at first, but actually I thought that as a choice of technique, it was really interesting because it kind of breaks that sense of immersion. And by breaking it, it kind of raises again that sense of criticality where you're not lost in the experience, but it's making you think of how this is being presented, how one story leads to the next. So once again, as you were saying, when you're using these new technologies, you really have to think about how to use it, how to break the effect, when to be most immersive, when not to be, and how that's most important to your specific message. So content versus technique.
So, Doron, you want to speak about technique also?
Yeah. So I'm talking again from the gaming industry perspective, and the gaming industry has a tendency to overuse technology, and we've seen it with the Nintendo Wii and the Kinect, where suddenly everything is movement controlled, and I think we're going to see in the next 2 years, I think almost every first-person game will be for VR, and it won't work well. And people probably won't like it and will return to playing games regularly on a single screen. And VR will find its niche in the gaming world. But it's not going to be every first-person game. I mean, again, I'm talking about movement, but I think most gamers, and we again learned it from the Wii and the Kinect, that most gamers want to play sitting down. No one is going to stand up in a room and walk around, and I mean, it's good for a 10-minute experience, 20-minute experience, but no one wants to play like that. No one will sit for 4 hours and play Call of Duty, running around the room. So yeah, I think VR will find its niche, but it won't be every first-person game, and that translates to the technology versus the narrative. Yeah.
You want to show us the movement?
Yeah, all right. Let us do a video clip. Next one.
Movement in VR.
Yeah. You can quiet it, but that's the first experience almost everyone who tried the VR tried. That's Tuscany. It was made by Unity. And you can see the movement, and everyone who tried it for the first time got sick and vomited because you're moving with the gamepad and you're looking around and it rotates the camera, and no one really liked it. So then when I went to translate my game to VR, and it's a first-person game, we can't see anything because it's very dark. So what I did was use the gamepad to automatically rotate the camera and move forward and backwards with camera animations. I think you see? I pressed forward, and that's another experience I made. It's a haunted ride, and in here what I did is a passive experience, and the camera is moving slowly forward. I think this works really, really well. Most of the VR experiences, which are not games that I like, use this technique, that just moving the player forward slowly and then showing them things. That was supposed to be scary because So that's a theme park haunted ride kind of experience. It was and this is the game I'm most looking forward to in VR. It's going to come out when the consumer product comes out, and you can see the movement. It's sort of like a grid movement, popular in RPGs in the early 90s. The camera moves a little bit, it jumps a little bit forward when you press forward, and it works really, really well. And I encourage you to try it. It's available for the demo. And I think this is thinking outside of the box for a movement in VR, because you hardly feel the jump in VR. You can see it here, but you hardly feel the jump in VR, and you don't get any nausea, and you can just walk around. And so yeah, that's it. That's the clip. And I think movement is going to be a big thing in VR and gaming in the next year or two. And I think what they did with Technolast is a step in the right direction.
Of course, we're the best in the world, but what do you think about Israeli industry and our possibilities to meet up or challenge even the world? And what are the action items that Israel and who in Israel should take in order to move forward and to build this kind of industry? You start.
Okay. So I think that right now VR is so new, and so experimentational that everyone who has the ability, and no one has the excuse not to have the ability, because we live in an era that it's so easy to learn and to get access to technologies and techniques. And I think that everyone should try it, and I think the Israeli industry is very ripe for that, because the Israeli gaming industry is almost non-existent in the sense of big companies producing big games. But the indie industry in Israel is vibrant, and it's alive, and there are a lot of indie games being made in Israel. Not all of them come to completion, but there are a lot of gaming people in Israel, and I mean, video production-wise.
But what's your fantasy about the future?
My fantasy about the future, that Israel will be a powerhouse, a VR powerhouse, and it has every chance of doing it, because
How do we come from indie, vibrant society?
Because I think indie is the future. I don't think that big industrial companies making big games is the future. I think what the mobile gaming revolution did was put the indie in the spotlight. A lot of indie games are making big money. A lot of indie companies are becoming. Thank you. Two.
It's a 3D sound.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that indie is the future, and I think Israel has a great indie industry. It's underground, but I think it's going to come above the ground, and you're going to see a lot of games that are made in Israel by small teams. And take Unity, for example. It's a 3D game engine, and it's so easy to use to anyone who knows a little bit about software development, and it's free, and you can make an amazing game with a team of like 2 to 3 people, even one man can make a game. So yeah, that's the future, and I think that we as Israelis, we are dreamers. We are not content with working a day job and coming back home and going to sleep. We like to dream, we like to do stuff at night. Me, for example, but I think many people in Israel are like that. So that's why Israel is going to be a powerhouse.
In Jerusalem, especially, miracles are facts.
Yeah.
Yoni?
Yes, indeed. In Jerusalem, they are happening. Well, I think the future of content in VR is going to start from indie developers, but in the same time, I think the difference between mobile games and games in general to a media in which you have to give a certain presence is that the amount of media or details or animations that you have to put into it in order for you to keep the experience rich is a lot bigger than the amount of content that you have to make in order for you to get an entertaining gaming experience on a flat screen. I think that's one of the big changes that are going to come up in terms of just the amount of content that has to be created in order for you to keep the presence of the users intact. And I think that we're going to probably see some convergence between animation and gaming as a result of that, in which, you know, gaming companies will create, you know, the narrative of how do we get it interactive in the right way, while animation companies in Israel will probably create content for that. So we will be seeing, you know, mutual projects from gaming companies and animation companies in order for us to create a lot of content that would probably be needed.
I actually completely agree with what Doron said in terms of like how it's going to happen, because I think that when I grew up in New York, there's an expression which is that necessity is the mother of invention. And when I came to Israel, I found that you guys had modified it and said necessity is a mother. So when you live in a situation like that, you tend to produce, because it's not a luxury, it's a reality, and it becomes part of a lifestyle. And I think that what will happen here with VR as well is exactly like you said, there are going to be failures. But the failures, if we quit, are failures. But if those are the failures that then break through to where we succeed, then that's really going to bring Israel as to one of the leaders in VR, because that's the nature of the people that live here, is to drive that forward. And I just want to add one on to that, and that is in Hollywood there's an expression which is that content is king. But what most people are not familiar with is that distribution is queen. And if you're married, you'll certainly know who runs the house. It's not the king. So this is a big impact point, because, and coming back to indies from the film world, if you go back 15 years ago, the film world, live action and so on, was dominated by the studios. Today, there are more indie movies today by far, and we see even all the way into the sanctuary of the Academy Awards, how indies has now impacted the yesterday vernacular. And I think that's because distribution channels have changed. And because the same way today in technology, gaming distribution will change, it will actually turn the indies into the leaders. And if you have innovation and you have indies, then you become a leader.
I'm not a practitioner, as I said, like an art historian of animation. So I don't focus specifically on Israel, but I have to say I studied in the UK for a long time. And although I personally love London, someone once said to me that the UK is a previously developed country. And I think Israel is the exact opposite. I think there's such a sense of innovation, and we always say that rules are perceived as suggestions here. So this idea of thinking outside the box is actually this wonderful incentive to these new technologies. But also the fact that the area isn't dominated by these huge corporations, and the fact that there is room for these smaller groups that can develop kind of faster and these more contemporary ideas. So I think there's huge potential for what Israel can become.
Do you have any questions?
It's more about the storytelling. I'm wondering if someone's been, how successful have you been? Like, I've been to an interactive theatre experience, and compared to a normal play, the storytelling was you know, it was very limited. And I imagine that would be, you know, compare that to a VR experience. So how successful have you been in terms of, you know, film in VR?
Do you have examples of successful VR storytelling? I don't know any feature-length successes. I know I've seen and heard about a small 10 minutes. It's very complicated, and right now, like I said, we're trying to make the first Israeli horror 360 movie. The crew has to dismiss itself, because it's like a stage, it's like a theater, very similar to theater. You have to do all the rehearsals, and then the player with the camera on him, nothing of the set can be around him. So it's also a different kind of technique, not only storytelling. And like we said here, the storytelling, you wanna, I don't want to make speeches, you want to...
I can say for now?
Yeah, you just say.
I can give an example from a movie we did for Basic International. It's the little green parrot that we're animating. And on that movie, the parrot actually had only one scene, but the rest of it was live action. It was a learning experience, and it was definitely rewriting everything, which means you don't have the ability to make a long shot. You cannot really observe something from afar. You're always in the middle. All of a sudden, there's a sense of, what is my private space? When is something too close to me, which makes me feel uncomfortable and I'm not related to the story, or when is it too far away from me? I'm there, it's changing from writing an observation to writing an experience, and I think that's the biggest change. It's no longer writing, an overview of a subject. You need to think from the point of view of why is the person I'm going to put in the middle going to sit in the middle, and what is the kind of experience I want him to go through. And if I want him to move from place to place, how do I do it? I think that was a great example of just using the cuts, which sometimes are distracting in VR, but they're actually a way of overcoming the sense of nausea you get from drifting around or from moving too fast or all kinds of different things. So in our attempt, the initial idea was to film everything in 360 degrees inside their server farm, the new one in Jaffa. And in the end, from both technical reasons of how do we do that with GoPros who are changing and they're not the highest quality of cameras, and how do we get everything recorded over there, and eventually we did it in a green screen studio. So we shot the 360 degrees separately from the actor, and most of the time the actor was actually in a limbo background with technological 360 degrees things happening around him. And again, that was a change because from a storytelling perspective, it wasn't compelling enough in just putting the viewer there. Another thing was we realized that when you see a presenter inside of the server room, which seems huge when you look at it without an actor inside of it, once you put the talent in, all of a sudden it looks smaller. So we figured out that you have to really think about when is 360 degrees used in the right way, and in our case it was, well, let's just use the gimmick and let's build the world around it in animation in the end. So yeah, you have to think differently.
And like we said, we're only in the beginning. We're dealing with the same problems, and we're starting to understand. Maybe we don't have the answers, but we know already the issues, the problems that we have to face.
Actually, in that sense of narrative and how complex the narrative can be or should be. Can I show the clip that I provided in that sense? This is an example, different ideas of narrative in relation to animation. So the example I brought is more about documentary games, which are games dealing with actual events. Once again, breaking the sense of entertainment.
Half the Sky is a multi-platform project. We're making a very important and very engaging 4-hour television series. But at the same time, we're producing mobile games, and we are making a social networking game on Facebook.
Facebook games are really special in the gaming world.
There are women in their 30s and 40s, even up to 50, who might be playing for the first time.
And the numbers are really big. Farmville is one of the most successful games on Facebook. The whole idea is that as you make progress, you need to invite other people to complete quests or different challenges. And for us, this idea that you can actually play with your friends and invite them is the main reason we chose Facebook for Half the Sky. What could be more ideal than a game that is all about recruiting more people into this global movement? You are going to meet Radhika. She's an Indian woman, and you're going to take her on a journey from oppression to opportunity.
We start in India, we go to Kenya, Vietnam, Afghanistan, and US. Radhika will be your gateway into meeting other women and their situations in these other countries.
And all those challenges is the quest you need to complete. Some of them would be around maternal health, some of them around education, economic empowerment. It could be a quest around gender-based violence. You can actually take action that will affect people in the real world. The way we're doing it is that we collaborate with some of the leading NGOs in the world.
Room to Read, GEMS, Foundation, Toscan, Heifer International, World Vision, One, and the Fistula Foundation.
At the end of a quest, we give you the option to donate real money to those NGOs, and it's always connected to the gameplay. So, for example, if you need to get a virtual goat in order to complete your quest, you also have the option to give a real goat and donate it through Heifer International.
We're making substantive change along the way. We are making a game that will engage millions of players.
A win for us would be greater interest, greater conversation, public discourse around issues facing women and girls worldwide.
So, what's VR about it?
Well, no, in the sense of virtual reality of not necessarily the Oculus, but in the idea of living an experience. And in the sense of the narrative, to answer your question, I think what's happening here is something really interesting because the game itself is actually really simple. Okay, you're trying to help. The way that the creators dealt with this issue is they created very, very simple narratives. Okay, so you're a woman trying to achieve this goal. But what's happening narrative-wise is two things. On one hand, experience, this virtual world that they've created, is part of a much larger platform where you can read about the content, you can get information in so many different ways. So the narrative becomes one aspect of a much larger narrative that you're getting. So that's on one hand. But on the other hand, this idea of the simplicity of the narrative.
Any other questions? Yeah?
You talked about using the VR as a tool for delivering a message or content. And what about the opposite way for narrative, making it as a message and letting more experiences in new art forms and looking at it not as filmmaking, 360 filmmaking, but
Are you looking at me?
Because you talked about using it as first you have to know what you want to say, and then using it
Right.
as a tool.
Right. Yeah, but that was like 3 minutes ago, so I didn't remember. I just wanted. So I totally am on board with you. In fact, this to me, like growing up in New York and like watching Andy Warhol starting to play with these mediums. Probably saw him on vinyl if you don't familiar with who he is. So. But I think exactly like you're saying is that there has to be the artists who go out and they're going to be the groundbreakers who will probably stumble upon how to use VR. I meant it a little bit differently. Artists versus storytellers. Storytellers are really about trying to communicate. Communication, therefore, is the message, is the medium, so you have to know if you're in the right medium. But artists should be completely, use the expression out of the box. I always say, what box? Right? You should just like go and let wherever your mind wanders, let it wander and play with it and turn it upside down and turn it inside out and think about, well, what happens if I did 360 the other way, huh? Right? So once you start to play with it, this is the kind of stuff that will lead to the discovery where gamers and storyboard people will really learn from those experiments. So thank you for pointing that out, because definitely I was referring to the storyteller versus the artist who should just plunge in without any precondition and see where it leads to.
4 points for the questions. Very good. So I'll sum up, and if there's something more that you want to ask, please do. So I'm very practical, and I want to do a list of action items, what we heard about today. How should we, here in Israel, I mean, in all over the world, but here in Israel, how should we go forward? So we'll start with the end. Traditionally, in live action, there's the golden triangle, which is a producer, director, and screenwriter. And I think here there's of course a change. Of course, in animation also there's the artist itself. But here, if we really want to go forward, I think it's a triangle of the artist, the storyteller, and the technology. These three people have to develop each one in their own way, but then collide, and I think from that we'll get something out. So we as, I'm not the government, but the government should, or public money should help create these indie hubs or people or support young people to think about it. Of course, Tel Aviv University is starting the new department talking about 360 VR, these guys, and that's exciting. We're trying to do the same thing in Jerusalem, joining the tech in the university, which are learning how to do it with technology, and Bezalel Art School to combine these two together. And that's the other thing. There's like the indie, it's the academy, but then we have to start working. And of course we have to build platforms for big studios, not only for indie studios, to do some big work. And of course the international connection is very important. Like we do in Jerusalem in animation, bringing Disney over is not only money, it's also knowledge and know-how, which is very important to be in a dialogue with the world. But now we found we're moving to the next step, which will come in VR, is not only working with big companies or doing something for Google, but doing something IP with our rights, with our zechuyot that we can sell the world, and that will make Israel a center. Not only like in India, they do animation work for the United States, but we want to create our own content, and also me as a film fund director. We're really going into supporting Israeli art house films, but challenging our creative people to leave the hyper reality Israeli filmmaking and to start going to fantasy world. And VR is very strong with that. And going to CGI, we want to see more CGI in Israeli films. And actually in New York, a company, Artery, is building Israel's largest CGI operation in Jerusalem these days. And we see it all connected. Animation, storytelling, VR, technology, also documentary, and also gaming. And I think the combination of all should work. Yes?
Yeah. Do you think advertising should be a good way for you to finance the project, and also, a good way for the advertiser to promote the grant? And do you have such interest from advertisers?
And?
Do you have such interest from advertisers or brands?
I'll let Yoni answer that.
No. I think that advertisers have a tendency of, on one hand, exploiting new technologies to try and create a buzz, but in the same time not really putting the money where the mouth is, which means if you look at digital, which these days is, this is the shit. This is the only thing that really matters, but none of them are really exploiting it in the right way or putting the same amount of money that they used to be putting on other industries. So I think it will become another set of tools to be used in order for you to sell certain kind of products, and it definitely has a uniqueness to it, so we will see it coming more to life in different products or in different premieres of new things that they're trying to sell. But in the same time, only a few of them will actually be the right partners to put the right amount of money to create something big. So yes, it will start, yes, it will happen, but in the same way that we saw in digital, it will take time till they'll start believing that they really should be putting money into it.
So we have to finish, so each one say one 4-letter word.
Animation is no longer fantasy, it's everywhere. That'll be it.
Just 4 letters?
Well, that'll be my ending note.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you all. And usually I come to these sessions and I think, people are going to talk and we know everything. But I really learned from the session also from your questions, and thank you all for coming and have a good one.